Hi, I'm Amy Koranek. I'm in the Sculpey Design Studio today to show you how to make slabs. We're going to make several slabs from start to finish. Floral, pebble, marbled, and also a silkscreen slab. We're going to see how those are constructed, and then when they're all done, we're going to mix and match them and cut out some different shapes to make several styles of earrings. So if you're ready, let's get started. First, let's take a look at the colors that I chose for today's slab. I'm using all Primo because I love Primo, and I've got turquoise, sunshine yellow, bright green pearl, purple pearl, and white. And I've chosen sort of an array of colors from the absolute lightest and then up to some darker tones. I like to do that with slabs. I like to have really light colored backgrounds and then some accent colors on the top. Slabs also work out really well with souffle. Primo and souffle are my favorites for jewelry making because they're super strong and flexible. Another thing I want you to know is that I did pre-mix some colors. I have some of these colors tinted with white already pre-mixed, and I like to have various shades going in my slabs just to create more depth. Also, you'll notice that some of these are flat colors and a couple of them have mica in them, which add that little shimmery shine. And I also like to mix up, same way I do mokumegane, I like to have flat, dark, light, a variety of textures and tones. Those are the colors that we're going to work with today. Now let's take a look at how some of these other slabs work. I generally like to put light colors in the background, but sometimes it works out really well, like this particular pair, to put a really dark saturated color in the background with an even darker color silkscreened over the top. This is an especially neat pair because it has a real neutral background, and I love the way the colors, the bright colors, pop off of that. So I just wanted to give you some inspiration here. A couple very neutral pairs. These two actually came from the same slabs. These two obviously came from the same slabs. And so you can see that it's so easy to mix and match styles once you have your slabs prepared. And today I'm going to show you how to do a pebble slab, a pebble with some floral over the top, a floral slab, and a silkscreen slab, and then we're going to marble some pieces together to get more of this really random look. First, we are going to silkscreen a piece of clay, and we're going to do that first so that the paint has time to dry. So I'm going to leave these out here for inspiration, and the point of this is that you can silkscreen on oven baked clay, and I've got a white sheet already prepared of my Primo. You can silkscreen on oven baked clay, and that just gives you lots and lots and lots of detail in that background that you can kind of use as your background slab. And just a really good jumping point with silkscreens. If you haven't tried it before, you might want to give it a go. So this is this is my favorite silkscreen. It's the feathers. You'll notice when you use our silkscreens that one side is a bit shinier and one side is a bit more matte. You always want to put that shiny side down on your prepared clay. And I even burnish it with my fingers just to make sure it's really sticking well. You also want to make sure that your clay is really flat to your work surface. And I have one of our silicone mats layered here on top so that I can get this out of my way after I'm done silk screening it. This sheet of white was prepared through a pasta machine to about the third thickest setting, and just depending on how thick you like things. With Primo and souffle, you can go down, fairly thinly for earring pieces. These are probably about the second thickest setting, which is under an eighth. And I went down to 3 on this one just to give me more, landscape here to work on. Now this is a whole bar of white, just to give you an idea of how much clay you can get out of a whole bar sheeted. I did trim off the scrap edges just to have some to mix with my colors. And so from a whole bar of clay, a 2-ounce bar, you can get about a 4x6 sheet. Okay, so I've got gloss acrylic paint, and this is in Dolphin Gray. And I love to use a glossy finish of paint against my clay. I feel like that added sheen just really makes the paint pop. And I've just applied a bead to the edge of my screen, and now I'm just going to pull it across the screen with a squeegee. And don't worry if you don't get it all in the first pass. you can just go back and keep pulling it in the direction that you want. Once all of the area is covered, then immediately you're going to want to remove your screen and put your squeegee right in water. And I've got a little tray here of water, so I'm just going to pull that in so that I can get this pulled off and right in there. And that is going to be just a really pretty subtle background. Subtle but not subtle. They're both light colors, the gray and the white, but they look so nice together. And I think that's going to be a really pretty background. But we need to set that aside and let it dry. And I'm going to keep my screen and my squeegee in this tray of water so that my screen will be easily reused over and over and over again, as long as I keep it clean. Now, since I have this on an extra silicone mat, I can just set it out of my way and let it dry. But you can see here on these silk screened pieces, I just used the tiniest little clay elements as pop details on the top, and that's what we're going to do later when that paint is dry. Now just give me a second to wipe up a little water right here, and we will move on to the next type of slab. Okay, first I want to create a pebble slab, and I'm going to use this light yellow as the background. And I'm just going to go ahead and use my roller and kind of roll it down to my work surface so it's nice and flat. And if I want to, I could just go ahead and trim away some of this wonky edge, and I could even save that amount of color, you know, for later. If it helps you think about things, you know, more neatly, to have those wonky edges gone, then go for it. This is about I think this is the number 2 setting on my pasta machine, and this was a half a bar of white and 1/8 of a bar of sunshine yellow. Next, I want to create some pebbles in the background, and what I call pebbles are these kind of large masses, this gray and this flesh tone back here, that kind of cover up a bit of the background. I want to decide if I'm going to use the super bright or the light. I'm going to go with these lighter tones in the blue and the purple, and these are mixed of this one's half purple pearl and half white. So what I like to do is just pinch off bits from my sheets and just apply those to the background. The reason I like to pinch when I'm doing pebble slabs is you get this absolutely random, you know, element on the top of your background. And it's really hard to duplicate that shape at all, and so the pinching, I think, works super well for random accent. And so I'm just applying a little pop of color here into my background with this tinted down purple pearl. And you can do as much or as little as you would like, but I'm also going to do the same thing with the blue tone I have there, and so I want to leave some empty space. As a reminder, you'll want to work as close to the edges as possible because we are going to cut this up for use in making earrings, and so we want as much usable landscape as we can get. And so if you go all the way out to the edges, you'll have more, you know, usable pieces. It's also interesting if you can get some really tiny pieces going back in here. So just take your time and fill up your sheet as much as you would like. And that would be our purple pebbles. Now what I like to do is take a roller and really run that purple into the background so that it's very flat. And you could run this back through your pasta machine if you like, or you can just use an acrylic roller to make those really seat down. Okay, that looks really good. Next, let's go in with some blue elements. And I'm going to pinch. This time, I'm going to keep my blue ones generally smaller than the purple ones. I think it works well to have a variety of sizes, but if you're kind of consistent in making the purple ones, say, the large pebbles, and the blue ones, the smaller pebbles, if I could say it's like random consistency, if that's a thing, let's make that be a thing for our slab making. So just always keeping the blue one slightly smaller than the purple. I think that looks nice. And it kind of gives you a control to the randomness where you don't have to constantly make decisions about what you're doing. It can kind of flow more naturally that way. And just making sure I get a little blue in all those big empty spaces. This is kind of a great springtime slab colorway. Okay, so there's a lot of that blue, and let's roll it again and make that really sit down into the background. Okay, now when I do a pebble slab, I like to have one more color that really pops. So let's see how that yellow, I think that yellow would be kind of cool popping out of there. Even though it's yellow on yellow, this is the undiluted yellow. So I want to put that on the top. So I'm just going to roll a tiny rope because I want these to be really sort of more of an organized little dot is what I'm going for with this one. Just cutting like lots of little equal size pieces, and then I'm going to drop these onto my canvas, little dots. Just rolling them up in my fingers. Sprinkling them in the empty areas. We'll just keep going here. Make sure you kind of have like all your spaces filled, even though it's random. Another thing to consider when you're making a slab is what you want to do with the slab when it's all done. So if you want to make jewelry pieces, you'll probably want your slab pieces, like all your design elements, to be smaller in the scale of jewelry. And if you want to do something more in a home decor scale, then you might add, larger elements and start with more clay, obviously. So we've got our little pop of color there with those yellow dots. And something I like to do is, this is our needle tool. I like to take the other end, which is just this super flat piece, and flatten those down. And also it kind of creates a little ring element around them, but it gives the top of that little bump just such a super flat space that I kind of like that sometimes. If I want pieces to be domed up, like say in this slab, I used our smallest etch and pearl to create those pearls on the surface. So there's so many ways to make sure these are seated down. I'm flattening them, or you could use the etch and pearl to keep them domed like that. Okay, so now we have just a really neat little pebble design. And so I would like to use some of this slab as a pebble design, but I would also like to add some vines to half of it and kind of create a mixy-matchy design where I have pebbles and I have pebbles with vines on top. So I'm going to take my needle tool and go in here in some of these blank areas and do some scoring. And this is just creating a very simple design element which will provide me with a little stem for my vines. I'm even going to do it on the half of the slab that's going to remain pebbles. And so on the pebble half, it's just going to provide me with sort of another design element. And you could make some of them crisscross, which looks neat. I like that as well. And you can keep some of them just singularly. Okay? And so I'm going to leave, I think I'll leave this half over here in the pebble design, and I think this half over here I want to show you how to add some vines on the top. And this time for my little vines, I'm going to use the bright green pearl at full strength. This part is not tinted with white. So what I want to do is just condition a little bit of the clay, and I'm just going to make a tiny rope and then make leaves to go over the top. So I like when I'm working in slab designs to have several different styles, but all in the same colorway. It kind of reminds me of quilting fabric, how when you go to a quilting or a fabric store and you see one colorway but with like 6 different design patterns, and that gives you the ability to really make a lot of different designs, you know, but out of all the same color, so they all match. So I just created a tiny rope. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick, excuse me there, and I'm just kind of pushing it down to my work surface, and I'm trying to make it stick so that when I go in here with my blade to cut these little pieces, I don't have them, you know, flying all over the place. And I'm just going to cut a whole bunch of little bits out of my rope. Slab making is really a great way to preserve or conserve a lot of colors, because as you can see, I might have used quite a bit of color to create my background, but I'm using very little bits of clay to create my elements on the top, and that really helps you know, manage your clay and not use up a ton of every single color. I'm starting by adding one of these little leaf guys to the tip of each stem where I want to create a vine, or they all actually kind of come out looking like ferns. And then I'm going to leave a lot of these over here. I'm not going to put them into vines so that I've got more than one choice. Now that I have the tips all marked, I'm going to go down the sides and just start making little leaves on the sides. And as I'm going to use my needle tool to create a textured element, which not only creates a detail, but it also helps this green clay to stick to the background color. And that's important when working in oven baked clay, that all the pieces stick together just by pressure. We don't require, you know, there's no gluing in oven baked clay. It's just the pressure between the layers. That one's way too big, so I just cut it in half with my needle. It's the pressure between the layers that helps them bond. And if you can create a tiny detail while you're adding that pressure, then you've, you know, accomplished 2 tasks in one hand motion. So I want to get some of these smaller ones. Some of these I cut way too big. And that's okay. I can just go back in and cut those in half if they're too large. So we'll just add, you know, some leaf elements on both sides of those little stems. Now if you wanted to, you could obviously, you know, hand roll each and every one of these little leaves if that's your thing. You could hand roll them all and put them in place, or you can use your tool to do the same, to create the same effect. And I like the way this green, this is a bright green pearl, so it's got the mica in it, and I like the way it's really popping off that flat background. Plus it's just so bright. I'm going to make sure that I get a few leaves, you know, on every little stem that I've committed. Make sure to get that little tiny detail on each of them. So it looks like a little leaf vein. All right, we'll just put a couple on that other side of this one, and then we'll move on to the next detail. So little by little, it just gets more and more intricate. Okay, so now we have a pebble slab with some leaves and vines on part of it. And another detail that a lot of people like to do is to add dots to the background of their slabs. And so the way you do that is you could take a ball tool. This is the 2mm. You could use your needle tool, or you could use this blunt point tool and just kind of make a random series of dippy doodly dots in the background, just to fill up some of that space, so that every area that you see once we start cutting up the slab into earring parts, so that all the areas have some detail. I like to kind of imagine a butterfly or a bumblebee kind of, you know, taking flight through this field of colors, and then this would be its little trail through the air. All right, good. So now we've got a 2-for-1 slab of pebbles and of vines. So I'm going to set this one aside. I'm going to really carefully pull it up for now and just set it out of my way so that we can work on another style of slab. And we'll save that in a safe place. And we will go on to a floral slab. Okay. So I'm going to roll this one down to my work surface. This one is half a bar of white and 1/8 of a bar of turquoise. So I've got another light background going here, and I think I'll just trim it just to give my brain a really nice little canvas to work with. Plus I can save, you know, these scraps of the lightened blue if I need those. So this is going to be a beautiful light colored background, and it's going to really make a nice pop for my other colors over the top. And let's start with a little vine this time, or a little frond in the background. So I'm going to use my pasta machine, or I could just use my roller, and I just want to roll this green, this bright green pearl super thin. And it doesn't have to be very big at all. You can see those beautiful mica stripes in that green pearl. And this time I'm going to end up with it right beside my blue, and I kind of want it to stick to my work surface just to help me work with it better. I'm going to trim away some of the scrappy sides, because what I want for these little vines is I want some very straight pieces like so. And I'm just going to apply those randomly to my background sheet. And they can crisscross, or, you know, however you want them to be. But just making a nice, you know, background of vines. So we'll just put one more. And make sure they're all seated down. Now when we did that pebble design, I did, as you'll remember, I did use some pressure with my roller to make sure those pebbles were all seated in the background. With floral slabs, we don't do that. We just let the floral design, you know, emerge from the field of the background and be, you know, just like a raised surface. So next I'm going to make some really bright flowers over the top with this purple, and I'll show you a really quick way to make some cute little flowers using a cutter. And I'm going to use our small circle cutter, and I'm just going to cut out some little circles out of a thin sheet of bright purple pearl. And I will put those on my slab in, you know, random spaces. And they can overlap or not. Let's put one up here. And then I want to do some real bright blue pieces that'll also be flowers. And I'm gonna roll this flat. I'm rolling that to probably about a 1/16, which would be like a 3 or a 4 on my pasta machine. And this time I think I'll do a larger flower with this one, using just a little bit larger cutter. And I'll sprinkle these around on the top. And then I'll show you how to turn these shapes into flowers. So what I want to do is take my blunt pointed tool, which it's the simplest thing, but I really love it. And what I do is just pull in from the sides of each of those circles. And just that pulling motion kind of separates the piece into petals. And we can do that on the larger one too. Just pulling and applying some pressure so that your little lines radiate toward the center of each one. And these are going to be kind of like the star of this slab, is all these flowers. Next, what I like to do is you could take this ball-ended tool, or you could take one of the Style and Detail balls. Let's just use this one and just push with a lot of pressure right down in the middle. And that kind of helps all those petals that we designated kind of open up. It also provides a place for the centers of the flowers to sit. So next I want to use like a real good accent color. And so I think I'll go with just the bright yellow. And we'll roll some balls to put in the middle. Just rolling that small, and then we'll roll these up by hand and just plunk those down right in the center of all those wells that we made. And they could be large or small. And then we'll seat those down in that well using that same ball tool. And when you push down like that, it just makes the most beautiful little rim around the edge of that flower center. And then let's use a lighter bit for the very middle. This will go in the middle of our purple flowers. So we'll put that there. I'm making these kind of large, but I'm going to use the etch and pearl to really make those dome up in there, which I think will look really nice. And then for the blue ones, I'll use this lightened blue. And I'll just cut some little balls and plunk them in that well. And then I'll grab my medium etch and pearl, and I'll just put that right over the top of that ball and spin it, and that gives you the most beautiful little pearl center. but we still want that yellow rim to show because it's just such a cute little detail. Okay, so now our flowers all have centers. Okay, we definitely need some leaves going in here. I'm thinking about using this lightened green that I have already mixed. This is 1 part white and 1 part bright green pearl. And we are going to put just a series of little leaves on these vines back here. And let me show you a quick way to do that. So I'm going to really flatten this. Really thin, probably to about what would be a 3 or a 4 if you're using your pasta machine. And this is kind of a shortcut way to make leaves. If you'd rather, you could, you know, hand roll every single little leaf, and that would be fine too. Okay, what I'm going to do next is cut a series of diamonds using a sharp blade. So I'm cutting through my light green pearl at an angle. And then I'm going to go at an angle the other direction. So what I'm making is little diamonds. But these will be such cute little leaves. To go in my background. Let me show you how. So we'll get rid of some of this edge scrap so that I can get right to my little diamonds. Or you could use your blade to lift that up. So you want to just pick up a little diamond and go right in here. And we could position them by hand. And then really give a lot of pressure to set that in place, making that beautiful little detail. Let me see if I can pick them up with this again. And if they overlap a bit, it's just going to look that much more, you know, natural on your background. I find these slabs to be very relaxing because they can either be, you know, as planned or as random as you want them to be. And certainly the flower ones, you know, are a lot more, you know, planned, and the pebble and terrazzo styles are a lot more random. So I'm just going to go right in here and put all these flowers down, and then we'll go back and texture them. You can also experiment with making your slabs very, very small and concentrated, you know, because you really only need to make as much slab as your project requires. So if you wanted to make a slab and put it on a light switch cover for your home, then you could just easily measure out only the amount of background color that you need to cover that light switch cover, and then that would be all that you need to turn into a floral slab. You don't have to do a lot and have a lot of extra. Okay, we're almost done with all these little leaves. All right, so now we just want to go through and set them all in place by using a tool to make that vein, which helps that little detail stick into the background. All right, leaves accomplished. Next, we just want to add a little bit more detail in the background, and so let's do that with some of this light purple color. We just need some little pops of detail to fill up some of those empty spaces, so we'll set some pearls in there with this light purple. A good way to make the elements all the same size is to roll a rope that's consistent all down its length and then cut the same amount from the rope with each stroke, and then that gives you really consistent size pieces, which that comes in really handy when you're using your etch and pearl tool to make design elements. You kind of want all your pearls to be, you know, similar in size. And I'm kind of dropping these randomly, but I'm really aiming for those empty spaces where we could use a little bit more detail. Okay, that looks pretty filled up. And it just does look like a little piece of fabric. So some of these smaller ones I'm going to use, nope, I need to go with the medium one to set those in place. That small one was just too small. Now the possibilities for adding detail to these sorts of designs, you know, is really endless. I think you can tell just from what we've done so far in this video. You know, you could go back in here and put a center on each flower really quickly. You could go here in the background and put some little fronds of floating stems, sort of like dandelion seeds floating in the background. You could do that little trail of diddly-doos that we did in the Pebble one with the stems on the top. There's just so many ways to just keep adding layers and layers of detail and depth. All right, let's just move this out of the way and we'll bring our silkscreen piece back in that we screened earlier, and I'm sure that paint will be dry and we can work on it. So here's our silkscreen piece. It looks so pretty with that gray paint on the top. And I just want to turn it so that there's a little extra paint on that edge that I don't want to end up wearing. So since we have this beautiful background, all we really need to do is just add a few elements, and I'm just going to add some of these little leaf shapes that we already have. We've already got these cut, they're good to go. I'm just going to sprinkle a few of these in the field just for a tiny overlapping design. Almost looks like confetti against these feathers. And with that, if you want to, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and seed these with a stroke of texture. Just to make sure they're really connected to the background. And oven baked clay likes to stick to acrylic paint, so that actually makes kind of a nice bond back there. And we can do let's put just a few elements of the colors over the top. So we'll just put a bunch of little dots in place over the top of the feathers. And I like to put these in groupings sometimes when you're doing dots, like groups of 3 or 5 you know, odd numbered pieces. So this silkscreen background is nice because it can give you the ability, you could cut this up into lots of small pieces, or like I was talking about, a home decor item like a picture frame or a light switch cover, or even wrapped around a jar. Then you kind of have those bigger you know, elements of the silkscreen in the background being larger to help cover a large area. And I'm just setting these down with the 6mm ball tool, and it gives them kind of a pretty little concave look. Let's add a few blue ones, and then this piece can be ready. We'll make the blue ones larger just to keep them more unique. And so far I really like how these pastel colors, they look really nice with that gray and white background. All right, so now in order to sit those, I'll just use the same tool, but just sit them down like tiny little dishes. Okay, we could add more and more and more if we want, or less is more, and it could be very simple like that. So just quickly, let's take a look at how to make a marbled piece. And so to start my marbled, I'm going to use up my scraps. So I'm going to cut right along this edge, even with that gray paint in it. I'm even going to pick up some of that paint there from the edge. I'm going to cut all these scraps off, because nothing goes to waste. There's actually no such thing as scrap in oven baked clay. It's all good stuff. This is going to be my base color. Here's a little more white I'm going to add in. And I think I'll just pull this out of my way, just so I don't mess it up. Okay, so I've got kind of a little rod of white, and I'll just add some of this mint green on here. And I'll add some of this bright green pearl. To here. And we'll add some of this bright blue, some purple. You're going to need a little yellow. Let's take the bright yellow. Okay, and you could easily do this also with all the scraps from your sheets, you know, that get cut up into earring pieces, but I want to go ahead and show you how to do a marbled piece really quick. Just keep twisting this to multiply those stripes. Fold it in half, roll it, and twist it some more. Just keep rolling and folding and twisting. And look at those beautiful stripes that we're getting. Try to keep your log very compact by pushing on the ends and twisting more. And pushing and twisting. All right, now at this point you could hand roll this, or I'm just going to push it through my pasta machine. I'm going to flatten it a bit with my fingertips. And then I'll just put it through here on the thickest setting, like so. It's so pretty. And then I'll go down another one just to get a little bit more, and one more time. And now we have this beautiful marbled piece that goes with all of our slab pieces. Okay, for earring assembly, I'm going to start with my biggest design first. This has such a nice, beautiful, big background that this would really lend itself well to very large, kind of oversized earrings. So let's take a look at using one of our larger cutters. This is the big oval, and cut out some very select areas here that would be a really nice large earring. And I'm going for this area because It has all the colors on it, and I just need to cut that, and then I'm going to cut over here for the second one. And that will make a really pretty, that will be the bottom piece of those earrings. So let me just set them here so that we can, you know, think about how we'd like to complement them, you know, with a top button or something. Okay, so there's that piece. This one I would want to do smaller cuts because this pattern turned out to be, you know, kind of more delicate and small. So I will use this second from the top teardrop shape and cut 2 of these for another pair of earrings. And we'll lay them out here so that we can see what we've got. And that looks really pretty. This also, I would probably do, I want to really conserve and use as much of this pattern as I can. So I'm going to do circles with these. And this is a really pretty area right here. I like that because it has both colors of flowers, but I don't want them to be too dead center. So I'll just go off a little bit. And then I'm going to go, I'll go right here for the second one. And that will give me a nice pattern. And I'm kind of turning them the way I want them oriented, you know, as earrings. Okay. So that looks really cute. Okay, now what I want to do is make a series of dangles. And so I want to think about which, you know, style I want at the top. And I think I want something very simple and blue at the top, and I'm going to make it into a small button that would go up here. So I think I'm just going to do this right here because this will complement the dots that I have. 2 of these will complement these well. And that will make a nice pair. I'm going to turn this one because I'm going to poke a hole in that bottom part. So as I'm cutting them, I'm staging them how I would like them to be for designs. Okay, over here, I think I'm going to go with a slightly larger circle, but cut it in half for the top area. So I'm going to cut a couple out of this marble. This is so busy that I want to use kind of a less busy background. And this would make a nice top, but I don't want it to be so large. So I'm going to use this cutter and actually cut away a part of that against the stripes there. And that would look pretty cool. And then, as a matter of fact, you could always use these for other earring elements. And I kind of think that came out too curved, so I can adjust that with a flatter. That looks nicer. With a flatter curved by using a larger cutter. I like that much better right there. Okay, now for this pair, let's think about what we want to use. Maybe we could just repeat our pattern with the pebbles, but use, you know, a much smaller, how would that look? We could use a much smaller cut out of this area and only use the pebble end, not the floral end. So I'm going to try that. And that would be our top button in this pair. So as you can see, out of these sheets that we've made, you could just get lots and lots and lots of different looks of, you know, earring patterns. Before you bake, you want to go ahead and make sure you've got a nice little hole in each piece so that that can receive the jump ring. So turn each piece so that you know where you're going to put that little hole. Line them all up. You want to put the hole close to the edge, but you still want to leave an appropriate amount of clay so that it will hold the jump ring. It's another reason I always use Primo or Souffle when I'm doing jewelry, because even that little tiny bit of clay right there will hold the jump ring. Now, you always want to go back through the other direction, so I'm going to show you how to do that. I'll do the rest of them off camera, but you want to make sure you have a really nice open hole to receive the jump ring. And if you go back and forth each direction, then you'll have a nice neat hole. So these are going to go in the oven, and when they come out, I'll show you how to assemble them. My pieces are all baked and I've allowed them to cool completely. Very important to let them cool before you handle them. And I'm ready to assemble. I have these two pairs already assembled with jump rings between the little button top and the dangle piece at the bottom. And then I have ear wires at the top. So just let me show you how I did that. Now it's really handy to have jump rings in a lot of sizes, and little jump ring kits like this are so easy to get, and if you have more than one size available, you can custom size your jump rings to your earrings. I also have some silver ear wires, fish hook wires, and I've got just some extras in this little cup. I like to use two pairs of pliers. Both of these are flat nose. Now it does not matter at all that these are bent. I just like this pair because it has a smaller tip on the top. So these are the two I'll be using, and I have selected, this is probably about an 8mm jump ring, and the reason I like this size is because it will dangle nicely between this piece and that one. And what I mean by that is you want the pieces to be able to kind of float freely against each other. You don't want your jump ring to be so small that it holds the two elements locked in place. You want there to be a little play between them. And so for all three of these pairs I'm using, I think this is probably an 8mm. I'm going to open these with using two pairs of pliers, and you always twist one toward you and one away. You never stretch jump rings open, you always twist. And I'll start with the bottom one by putting this in the hole at the top, and then I'll take my top piece, and I thread this on here so that it's like sewing. You want right sides facing like that, so that when they're open, both faces are facing forward. Then I'll just grab my pliers again and twist them. Make sure that clay piece isn't in the way. I'm twisting one toward me and one away until they line right back up the way they came. And that piece is good. I'll repeat that just so you can see it one more time. Twist this open, thread it through the front of this earring piece and through the front of this earring piece so that it lays down front to front, and then close this up. Okay, and then when you open this back up, you have both pieces facing the same way. And we've got a lot of nice play and wiggle room in there. Okay, if you use jump rings that are too big, they may not lay down nicely like this, so this is just about exactly right. Now with ear wires, I call this the front. That's the part that goes through, that shows on the front of your ear. And the little opening on the ear wire is usually tucked in the back. And so you just want to twist that open. You don't want to go too far because you don't want to break it, but just twist it open enough. I'm using my thumb to hold that ball out of the way. And then I'm going to run it through the front of that piece and then close it back up. Now if you wanted to, you could use a series of jump rings, like smaller ones, to create more of a dangle. But because the front of the earring is already in the correct orientation for the front of the art, this works out perfectly to put the ear wire directly through the hole. I'm going to open this, put the front through that little opening, hold that ball back, and then twist it back in place. You want to make sure the little hook in the earring gets right up under that ball. And those are ready to wear. Now one more way you could look at this is if you prefer a post earring, you don't have to use ear wires here. You could glue posts to the backs of these buttons with any silicone glue, maybe E6000 or Goop, or even a rapid drying instant type glue to hold a post to the back, and then you would have post earrings that are slightly dangly. All right, I hope you've enjoyed slab making, and if you do make some slabs, I'd love to see them. Just use the hashtag Sculpey so that we can find your work if you post to social media.